So welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book Study. This week I'm pleased to reintroduce Max D, who's come along to continue with the lovely Big Book Study. Over to you, Max.
Everybody, Max, alcoholic, Lois, thank you for your service, to all of the gang in the background doing service. It's amazing to be here, especially this morning. It's really amazing to be here every morning that we do this book study. And thank you for everybody for being here. It's the Saturday before Christmas here, and wherever you are in the world, whatever. So people have lots to be getting on with, I'm sure, but it's great to be able to hang together for a little bit before we go out into the world and practice these principles in all of our affairs, you know, when we're standing in those long lines, waiting to pay for whatever last minute bits and bobs, as they say here in Ireland. Just remember that code. Love and tolerance is our code. This is really where we can kick into action with this beautiful program at every given moment of the day. And I truly mean that. And I think it's a little talk to myself more than anything else. So we are on page 70. You may have thought last week, oh, why should just stop there? There's only like 2 paragraphs left in chapter 5, how it works. What an odd place to stop. But in actual fact, it is the perfect place to stop, because what these the first paragraph that we're going to go through, it gives a really, really good summary of where we're at, having been through these inventories. Gives us a good summary of where we're at since we started chapter 5, how it works, and gives us this little, I call it another little launch pad into the next step. So we'll just get into it. So if there's a little word already, one word, and I'm stopping. If we have been thorough, remember that little word if appears in the book many, many times, and it is very conditional. You know, you hear me say sometimes, if you do the work, it works, and if you don't, it won't. Because that's the reality of what happens. Certainly through my bitter experience, that's what I've come to understand. Of course, at the last page 16 of Bill's story, he talks about the fact that there are those that could not and would not see our way of life. But if you make the decision to go through with this process, if you do the work, it works, and if you don't, it won't. So if we've been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. Well, that's true. It's a basic statement that they're saying right there. You've gone through your resentment inventory. You've written down the principles, the institutions, the people with whom you were angry. You've also written down all of your fears in your fear inventory. You've gone through your sex inventory in detail as set out in the clear-cut directions in the pages prior to this, page 70. So you have written down a lot. And you are in and continue to be in this prayerful exercise. You know, you made the decision at step 3 to hand your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood Him. The process of handing your will and your life over commences step 4 right the way through to step 7, when you say your step 7 prayer, which ends with the word Amen. So it's so important to know at this point that you continue to be in the prayerful exercise. As you're going through this process, there's another entity here going on, which is the connection to the power that is greater than you. Okay? And it's important to just recall that. So in all of that stuff that you've written down, your first inventory, we've listed and analysed our resentments. So you have gone through your grudge list as per the definite example on page 65. You've written down a lot. You've gone through all of the people that you were resentful at, the institutions, the principles that you were resentful at. You have analysed your resentments in that you've looked at what was the cause. You've analysed them because you've looked at how it affects you around those 7 stimuli, as I call them, how your pride was affected, what you think other people think of you, how your self-esteem was affected, what you think of yourself, how your security was affected, how your personal relationships, sex relationships were affected, how your pocketbook, your money, your financial matters were affected, how your ambitions were affected, that being your desire for rank and fame. So you've analysed all of that stuff. And then you've gone into that last part where you're looking at yourself. Okay, so you've analysed all of that for sure. You've analysed all your fears as to why you have them. You've analysed your sex inventory. You've looked at every single person in there and you've gone, is it selfish or not? So you've done a good lot of analysing all of the stuff that is inside you, all of the stuff that has been blocking you. You've looked at the causes and the conditions. You've got down to the causes and the conditions because, as it says on page 64, your drinking was but a symptom. What lies beneath the symptoms is the conditions and the causes as to why you are the way you are. And then having completed those 3 inventories, as is set out, here's the reality. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. I emphasize that word begun. Remember, in page 64, it tells us that this might have been the first time that we've attempted such a deep dive, such a fearless, searching moral inventory of ourselves. We may never have attempted, as the first line on page 64, such a thorough, fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So right now, for the first time in your life, this is the first time you've gone into this amount of analysis of everything that has caused and the conditions that are happening inside you. Okay, it's important to emphasize inside you. It's also important to emphasize the word begun. You've only started to understand and comprehend their futility, that being their pointlessness. And you've only begun to understand their fatality, because like it says on page 66, we must be rid of these resentments. Why? Well, page 66, we talked about it a few weeks ago. You know, I call it the death page. Sounds pretty horrific, but the reality of it is, it makes expressly clear that if this business of resentment, it's infinitely grave. We find that it is fatal. For when harbouring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit, and the insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. So when you're looking at all of these inventories, you've started to see how pointless they are and the impact that they've had on you. And the fact of the matter is if we don't get rid of these, they could be fatal because the drink then could return. Now, don't be concerned about that, really, because if you continue with the process, you're going to have the spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, which will mean that you won't return to alcohol as long as you keep on doing what is suggested through your daily reprieve for the rest of your life, step 10, 11 and 12. But again, I'm not going to go into that because we grow where we're planted. Right now, we've got to understand where we are in this step, okay? So we're coming to the end of step 4, and here's the reality of where we are at. It goes on to say, we have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. Again, emphasizing you've only commenced. You've only started this. This is the first time in your life that you've looked at this stuff. And a lot of it might seem really, really alien to you. And when we say the word futility, the pointlessness of it all, please do not misunderstand what this word means. I'm not diminishing the experience that anybody has gone through and the impact that these resentments and your fears and your sex inventory and all of that has had on you. I'm not diminishing that experience that you've had of life. But to hold on to them in this moment is pointless. Because all of that stuff, the recent feelings from the past, are no longer what you have in this moment. Where you live is today, not yesterday, not 5 years ago, not 30 years ago. Where I live is today. And that takes practice. But that's what this program and the spiritual awakening as the result of the steps provides us. The ability to genuinely live right here, right now. It's a discipline. But when we have that discipline, everything starts to change. So we've started to see their terrible destructiveness. When I looked at my inventories, when I did this for the first time, I was like, whoa, Jeannie Mac. That wasn't quite what I was expecting to see, you know. And there was still a little bit at this point of me being, yeah, I've had a terrible life. I've been the victim. I could start to see a little bit of a change in my thought process, but I was really looking forward to sitting with my sponsor and spewing up all of this poo and landing it with them and saying, Lois, did you like the way I said that? Instead of what, you know, the language that other people might use. Spewing up all this poo. That's not what I say in my normal life outside. But I'm very mindful that some people might not be appreciative of profanity at 8:20 on a Saturday morning. So I'll keep it clean. But you get the gist of what I'm saying. You know, I can put it in the chat if you wish to translate it into normal Irish language. So, you know, at this point, I genuinely thought, right, thank God I'm out of my step 4, a bit of anticipation, nervousness, fear around moving into my step 5. But I thought, happy days, I'm just going to spew up all of this stuff and leave that there with my sponsor. But the instructions go on to tell us something quite different. Again, they continue. We've begun to learn. We've only just started to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look at them as sick people. Remember, we looked at that sick person's prayer on page 67. You know, we offered them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. So, you know, we're starting out on this journey of being tolerant and patient and showing this goodwill. Yeah, we're not experts at it, that's for sure. And I'm not an expert at it even now, but I'm just glad that I do have a set of spiritual principles that take me back and remind me of this stuff every single day. We do look at our enemies because we have been reminded that they are sick people too. We're only human at the end of the day. But what starts to change as we go through the rest of the program is, although they might be sick people, and at this point, we may be sick people because we're so affected by our resentments, our fear, and everything else, right? Yeah, that's the reality of why we behave the way we've behaved, because we are sick, spiritually sick too. The reality of it is, until we get rid of all of these resentments and so on, that's when we really start to straighten out physically and mentally. So as you continue to turn the pages for the rest of the program, your sickness begins to dissipate. Your sickness begins to melt away. And the reason why I'm using that term, melt away, is that, you know, in Bill's story, he talks about the icy intellectual mountaintop. You know, it starts, you're standing in the sunlight of the spirit. The sunlight of the spirit melts away that icy intellectual mountaintop so that you can see the sunlight of the spirit. And as that icy intellectual mountaintop about what you thought you knew about step 4 and what you thought you knew about what was going to happen in step 5, or what you thought you knew about your resentments and how you were in life, all of that starts to melt away, is the only way, the easiest way that I can describe this. And you see things from an entirely different angle. But remember that the whole turning your life over and your will over, you're still in the process. You've still got 5 to do. You've still got 6 to do. You've still got 7 to do. You know, you're still on this journey. So we've listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. Again, this is just a little nod to future steps. Don't be concerned about that at this point. They're just saying to you that you've noticed who you've hurt. And your willingness here is critical. Remember, throughout the entire program, we have to have, like it tells us on page 568 within the spiritual experience at the back of the book, this willingness, honesty, open-mindedness. These are the things that are completely and utterly essential for us for the rest of our lives. These are the things that are completely and utterly indispensable for the rest of our lives. So this willingness continues. So although you will not be going out to make amends until your step 9, you have to continue to be willing to keep your mind open and be honest with yourself about where you're at with all of this. So there's the summary, okay? This is not a one and done. This is not another tick box, boom, step 4's done and never to be thought about again, because it comes with us into our step 5, of course. But the point that is so important for me, I suppose, to emphasize is that well, think about this. How long have you drank for? How long have you used for? And the number of people, institutions, and principles in your life by which you've been affected can't change overnight. Okay? You've done your inventory, you're moving into the rest of the process. This is an ongoing thing. Okay? Some of my resentments and so on were removed overnight and disappeared, but there's other ones that still hung around. But what the program does is gives me the spiritual toolkit to continue to work these through. Okay? So it goes on to say then, in this book you read again and again, and I would say again and again and again, to the point with my sponsor I was like, okay, I get it. You read again and again because they emphasize and they re-emphasize that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. So what you may have had up to this point is you might not have even have had a faith in a God, but what you've had is faith in this process. Sitting with your sponsor, going through the inventories, doing what your sponsor has told you to do. You may not have understood why you're doing it. You may not understand what is actually coming out at you at those inventories at this point. You may not understand the depths of what this actually means, but you've been showing up with your sponsor. You've been going to your meetings. You've been of service in your home group. You know, you've been in the middle of those 36 spiritual principles, right in the center of that triangle, and being right in the center of the unity, the recovery and service. You've shown up. You probably haven't even understood why. You're probably thinking none of this is working. But because your sponsor and your group members, the fellowship, are saying to you, please, you know what? You're going to have a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. You've had faith in those people. You've had faith in the experience that they've had. You've had faith in what they're telling you. And therefore, have faith in the fact that this book is telling us time and time again that this faith that you've had up to this point has done for you what you could not do for yourself. Because there's no way you would be sitting in this room if you didn't have this faith. There's no way you would have completed this inventory if you didn't have this faith. So if you think you're doing this by yourself, think again. God is doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. You didn't get to step 4 by yourself. You didn't complete step 4 by yourself. All of the information that was brought to your mind in those inventories was not brought to you of yourself and only yourself. Remember what it says in the spiritual experience. You have now tapped into what they described at that point on page 25 as an unsuspected inner resource. But I suspect now that you have an inkling that there's something inside you. The great reality that is deep down within every single man, woman and child. So it tells us again and again, it emphasizes and re-emphasizes that faith is done for us that we cannot do for ourselves. Then they go on to say, we hope you are now convinced, now, in this moment, like here, right now, that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. Because the reality of it is, having gone through those inventories, you see the futility of it. And you've been trying all your life to change it. And it hasn't happened to this point. So convinced means to be moved by the evidence. So whilst you're looking at all of this stuff that you've written out, from my experience, I was looking at it going, what the hell do I do with this? What the hell is going on? How have I not seen this? How did I not know this? This is a completely different kettle of fish from what I thought it was going to be. I didn't think this experience was going to be what it was. And that actually, I can't continue to live my life like this. I need something else to help me. I need something else to take this, because if I keep a hold of this, I will have a miserable life. How can I continue to have this person that left my life 10 years ago? How can I still have them in my head? Like it says on page 66, squandering away the hours, thinking about this resentment, when in actual fact I could be more useful. But I can't master these. I can't wish these resentments away. Like I tried to wish the alcohol away. You know, I tried to wish it away, no matter how great the necessity, the desire, the urge, or the wish. It tells us that on page 34. Like I tried with my amazing willpower to wish the alcohol thing away. The same thing applies here with my resentments and everything to do with these inventories. I can't get rid of them by myself. So you become convinced, moved by the evidence, that God can, not might, not maybe, but can. And I would suggest will, 100% can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. God can take them away. Remember that third step prayer. Take away my difficulties. So victory over them can bear witness to thy love, thy power, thy way of life. These things that have been blocking you are going to be removed. They're not going to leave a wee trickle behind. No, they're going to be removed, cut out. Yeah. I shared that personal example about my mum when she was diagnosed with cancer, you know, the symptom was the lump. What did they do? They cut it out. They removed it. And then they got down to the causes and the conditions and provided her the prescription that she needed for her healing. And more or less, that's what's happening here. The symptom is you're drinking and you're using. You cut that out. You're getting down to the causes and the conditions and the prescription for the rest of your life against that progressive illness that you have. It solves everything. Not just the drink and drugging. It solves everything. So here's the little caveats though. If, there's that word again, if you've already made a decision. That means if you've made the decision, it's step 3. Truly, if you have made the decision at step 3 to hand your will and your life over to the care of God as you've understood him, but not only step 3, it goes on, and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, so your step 4. So if you've truly made that decision in step 3, and you've completed the inventory of your grosser handicaps, that being your selfishness, your dishonesty, your resentments, your fears, your sex inventory, you've listed all of that inventory. Get this, people. I love this line. You have made a good beginning. Full stop. The reason why I love this line is because I remember sitting with my sponsor and arguing at this point when I first went through the steps and saying to him, I've made a good beginning. I've been working on these inventories. I slugged my guts out. I wrote all of this down. I've got pages and pages and pages of stuff. I've spent hours on end doing this stuff. I've been tired. I've been exhausted. I haven't been able to sleep. Every time I've called you, you've just put the phone down on me and told me to get on with it. You haven't been listening to me. And I've just made a beginning. Like, what else do I have to do? But the reality of it is, having completed these inventories, yeah, you have. You've made a good beginning. But here's the reality. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. Now I'm going to get a little bit gross here. All of that stuff that you've identified in your step 4 inventories. Yep. You've been chewing on it for weeks. You've been chewing on it for years. It's been sitting around in your body. Just bleh. That's all it is. Yuckiness and whatever. And you have, through this process, had to gulp a little bit and go, oh my God, yep, I recall that. Now I can see where I was selfish, I was dishonest, where I was wrong, where that was my mistake. That's where I was to blame. Absolutely. That's the truth of the matter. You're seeing it from an entirely different angle. So you've taken a gulp, you've swallowed it, and you've kind of digested it, and it's continuing to work through your system. When you digest food, there's only one place for it to go, really. And it's not spewing it back up again, vomiting it all on the table in front of you and saying to your sponsor, oh, here I am, this is all my troubles and woes, I'm going to vomit this all up in front of you. No, you have to poo it right out of you, down the drain, into the sewers, away. I know it's gross. I know it's a gross visualization, but people, that's what you're doing. You got to get rid of this poop. I really want to say the proper word, but I'm not going to. You got to get rid of it all. And that's what's going to happen. Right? It's sitting in your tummy. It's sitting in your pit of your stomach. You don't want to be constipated with all of this poop any longer. Get rid of it is the point that you're at. Okay? I thank you, Laws, for the visualization. Isn't it handy when a little emoji can come up on your screen like that? You are funny. Anyway, so there you are. You get to the end of chapter 5, how it works, and it just tells you, go and have a good poop, right? It's the reality of it. And then my sponsor, ever so cleverly, and I remember looking up at him and seeing the smile on his face when he turned the page. You know, you've made a good beginning, Mags. You've made a good beginning. And then he turned the page 72, chapter 6, the title, Into Action. I thought, you know what? You can do one. You can do one. Into action. Are you having a laugh? What have I been doing from the front cover page? You're telling me now I have to get into action? What on earth are you people all about? Raging. Absolutely raging I was that he had the audacity to tell me, and he did it in that lovely little voice. So, Mags, here we are. Isn't it exciting? Chapter 6, Into Action. I really and truly wanted to not be very loving and tolerant and grant this sick person, you know, all of the stuff that I'd been told to grant him. I wanted to get up and leave. I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted by this. But the reality of it is, this is where the action really starts. Because you are now on a trajectory where something else takes over. Okay? You've done all of the work up to this point. Something else takes over. Because if you've made the decision, there's something else at work. So it reminds us, having made our personal inventory, what should we do about it? Isn't that a good question? Yeah. Sponsor, what the hell should I do about it now? So we've been trying to get a new attitude. That's your step 2. This certain simple attitude. Okay? That we're continuing to come to believe that this power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity around alcohol or whatever it is, mind-altering substance that we're using. So up to this point, you have been trying to get that new attitude. You might not fully have come to believe that this power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. I've said it all along. I can't really tell you when I came to believe that for absolute certainty this power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I just know now that it has happened. It doesn't really matter for me when it happened. I just know, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, that it has. And more I practice this program and I practice these principles in all of my affairs, more and more I become convinced that this power is working in and through me and doing for me what I cannot do for myself. So yeah, up to this point, you have been trying to get a new attitude. You've also been trying to get a new relationship with our Creator. So that's your step 3. Remember to build with me, to do with me. So you're building this relationship with your creator. You're not doing this by yourself. And what you've also been trying to do is to discover the obstacles in our path. That's your step 4. You have discovered through your step 4 the obstacles that have been in your path. You know when you used to do an obstacle course at school? Did anybody do that? Or have I just made that up? Yeah, Lois, I can always guarantee that you'll support anything I say. You know where they put the little cones out and they made you jump around them and throw bean bags and stuff and jump off a bench and do like these shuttle runs and stuff and hula hoops and stuff. You know, like an obstacle course like that. Yeah, I wasn't very athletic. Anyway, those little cones and benches and hula hoops and ropes and shuttle runs and all of that, they were the obstacles in my path. I just wanted to run from one end of the assembly hall to the other and stop. Those obstacles were just a long way round for a shortcut, really, you know? And that's what these obstacles in our life have been, a long way round for a shortcut. There was an easier, softer way, which was to do the steps and have a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. So there in those first few lines of into action, they've summarized. You're getting this new attitude with your creator. You're trying to build this new relationship with your creator. You've identified all these obstacles in your path. You've admitted certain defects having gone through your step 4. There's certain things that you've been able to see by yourself. Defects basically is a lack of something. We'll come on to that later on. So you've admitted, you've let the idea in that there's certain things that you lack. Okay? You lack tolerance, you lack love, whatever, I don't know. But there's certain things through this inventory that you have identified that you lack. You've ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. You know, you've been sitting with yourself and you've been doing these images and you're like, yeah, well, I can kind of see what the trouble is there with the sex inventory, the patterns of my conduct. Or I can kind of see how the fears and the patterns of my thought process around fears is impacting my life and the trouble that is causing me. You've put your finger on the weak items in your personal inventory. You can see those weak items in your inventory. Again, you can see those patterns in your behavior and your thinking. And what are you going to do? Now, these are about to be cast out. And this is significant because at this point on page 72, the trajectory is now starting to change. Back in step 1, on page 27, it talked about the fact that our emotions were going to be cast to one side. In step 2, on page 48, it talked about the fact that our feelings were going to be cast aside. Now, as we move into step 5, they're telling us they're going to be cast out. We're going to get rid of them. There's a significant difference now as to how you move forward with your feelings and your emotions. They're going to be cast out. The future of your life is that you are not going to be generated and react in the way that you have done previously regarding your feelings and your emotions. You're going to be given a set of spiritual tools that enable you to overcome your feelings and your emotions in order for you to see life and experience life differently. You're going to become more and more and more awake to the impact that the feelings and the emotions have on you, how they drive you, and how you can cast them out to ensure you can see things and experience things in a completely different way. And in order for that to happen, though, this requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we have admitted to God. This is the most important thing, the order in which step 5 is listed in the short form on page 59. It's really important. We admitted to God. number one priority, ourselves and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 5 is set out in that order for a specific reason. When you're going into this step 5 process with your sponsor is the conduit. Your sponsor is a vessel, like you are a vessel. But in this way of doing it, the most important thing is that you are admitting to God the exact nature of your wrongs. You're saying it to yourself as well and to another human being. That's the way that you're just going to do it. So in doing that, you're going to admit all of these things to another human being. What are you going to admit to them? The exact nature of our defects. The nature of something is the controlling force. Okay? You're going to talk with your sponsor in the first instance about the nature of the controlling forces that impact the lack of things that you have in you. Now that might sound really confusing, but the controlling forces that have been played out in your life have been your selfishness, your dishonesty, your self-seeking, all of those things that you've identified in that fourth column. Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, fear. Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, afraid. Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, afraid. Right? They're the controlling forces of how you have behaved with your conduct over the years. And those controlling forces are a lack of something in you. Lack of power is your dilemma. Well, where are you to find that power? Like it says in 45, well, that's exactly the purpose of this book. So as you continue to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, as you understand Him, working right the way through to your step 7, you're going to have a really clear picture of you and the controlling forces in your life, and be able to say that more than ever before, lack of power is your dilemma. And therefore, you must continue with the remainder of the program to have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps in order to be free completely of these defects and have a way of life every single day that enables you to see things from the perspective of complete and utter fulfillment with a power greater than yourself. That's what this is about. So the fact that we're going to do this brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery, which we've mentioned in the preceding chapters. So we are now at the point where we're moving into this step 5. Okay? Now, interestingly, in the short form of page 59, but step 5, it starts on 72 and it goes right up to 75. There's 3 full pages of information, data to go through here to understand exactly what this step 5 is all about. But there's so many of us previously, my experience anyway, personally, I sat in the rooms and read step 5 on the scroll or heard it read out in chapter 5 how it worked. We'd admitted, oh yeah, I've admitted to God, to myself, and whatever, the exact nature of my wrongs. Never said it out loud to anybody. Held it all inside. Had I actually done step 5? No, I hadn't. Not until I'd done it in the way that is set out just here. So the thing about it is you might be a little bit apprehensive about all of this stuff. And they acknowledge that. These people knew us so well. The people that wrote this book know us so well. They say this is perhaps difficult. Yeah, they're acknowledging the fact that this is perhaps going to be difficult for you, especially discussing our defects with another person. There is a little bit of anticipatory fear when you're going in to say all of this to somebody who you've only just met recently through this fellowship. Of course, they identify the fact that this is perhaps going to be difficult. We think we've done well enough admitting these things to ourselves. Of course, I was giving myself gold stars, reward charts on the front of my fridge, pat myself on the back for doing a really good job in my 4th step. Sure, I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Thought I'd done an amazing job admitting all of these things to myself in the comfort of my own home. There is doubt about that. Because here's the thing. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. If I sat with all of that stuff in step 4, patted myself on the back, give myself 17 gold stars, reward charts all over the place, and just continued not to do the rest of the steps, been really, really proud of myself, continued to go to my meetings, completely and utterly insufficient. You might be sitting here, or have done in the past. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. You might be sitting here thinking, I'm not going to bother. I've done before. Everybody thinks that that's the biggest, scariest thing, but I've got through it. So I'm just going to leave it there. No, it is necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. I love the fact that the first 100 that wrote this book make it so expressly clear. So what is a good reason why we should do so? Why should we sit with another human being and admit our defects, admit our wrongs? Why should we? You don't need to ponder that. You don't need to percolate that. You don't need to sit with that question and work it out like Einstein or some quantum physics thing. No, you don't need to do that, because here's the answer why. Here's the good reason why you should sit and admit to God, to yourself, and another human being the exact reasons. The best reason first. If we skip this vital step, if you skip this life-giving step, we may not overcome drinking. And this next line is so true. Through bitter experience, I've experienced this myself, and I see it time and time again with sponsees. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. They've held something back from their inventories. They haven't been fearless. They haven't been searching. They haven't been thorough. Because why? They're trying to avoid this humbling experience. They have turned to easier methods. I'll just not continue with it. I'm happy enough where I am. I'll just keep going to my meetings. Call my sponsor every now and again. No, those easier methods will not work. The reality of it is here, trying to avoid this humbling experience, because that's what step 5 is. And I haven't got the ability to humble myself. I need to call upon a power greater than myself to bring me to the point where I can get through this, guided by my sponsor. You know, and if you avoid this humbling experience, or you try to skip this step, you know, if you skip over it, do it very lightly and hop into 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But if you haven't done this vital, life-giving step, inevitably, you will drink again. You can't hop, skip and jump over 5 and get on with the rest of it. You won't feel the benefits of it. You're turning your will through up to 7. So if you do skip it, or you try to avoid this humbling experience, what happens? Almost invariably, almost always, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, so they skipped over 5, persevered up to 12, they wondered why they fell. They wondered why they drank again. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. You've got to complete the thorough, fearless and searchful moral inventory of yourself. They did take the inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. Your step 5 is the opportunity to speak to your sponsor in the first instance and tell them everything about your life. Do not, under any circumstances, hold on to something that you think you've sorted out yourself. Don't hold on to it. Write it down. Get it out of you. Say it out loud, because let me tell you, your sponsor will place no judgment, no opinion on anything that you're going to say. They've heard it all before and more with bells on. Believe me. And the thing that you're holding on to that you believe is your worst item in stock is nothing. But your ego wants to make it to be the biggest thing on the planet. What are they going to say? What are they're going to judge me? They're going to give an opinion? No, they're not. Don't hold on to it. Get rid of it. It's your opinion that it's something really, really bad. It's your mind that has made this up to be something bigger than it actually is. Because here's the reason why. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. Look at that word, italics, thought. You only thought you'd lost your egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves. By doing this step 4, you're thinking that you've got over your ego and your fear, and you feel that you're thinking that you've humbled yourself. Great, pat on the back, happy days. I can go into the room and tell everybody, you cockiness, I have completed my step 4. Whoop, whoop, cheers, claps, all of that. Really? You only thought you'd lost your egoism and fear. You only thought you'd humbled themselves. But here's the thing. They had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. All, italics, emphasized, important. Do not miss anything out. This step 5 experience is not a one-off event. Yes, you'll do it with your sponsor, and that is an event. But this entire thing is a process. And we're going to talk more next week about what that process entails. Because you've heard me emphasize, in the first instance, your sponsor. In the first instance, your sponsor. There's a very clear-cut direction as to how step 5 has to be done. But in the first instance with your sponsor, tell them everything. Tell them all. Don't hold on to anything. You ask God to set aside every single thing you think you know to have a new experience with him so that you're going in here to have this conversation to get rid of everything that is blocking you from the sunlight of the Spirit. Let that icy intellectual mountaintop melt away so that the great wind can get through and through and through. This is about an absolute clearing of all the poop and nonsense that is inside you. Let your sponsor be the vessel. Let the conversation be one where the words flow and you set aside your guilt, your shame, your remorse, your embarrassment and everything else under the sun to allow God the opportunity to move in and through you. This continues to be a prayerful exercise. And let me tell you, those blocks will be removed. I'll leave it at that, Laws.